Hi guys, welcome back to Nasos Tray. Today on the channel, we'll be learning how to make this very beautiful, very easy, very gorgeous wrap flay dress with side pockets. Okay, so we'll be learning how to make this very beautiful gown, and it's quite easy. So if something you've been meaning to learn how to make, keep watching and let's get started. I have my fabric with me. I have 6 yards of this, but I didn't end up using all of it. Okay, for this tutorial, I have my scissors, my chalk, I just have my sewing tools. I have my lining piece because I'll be lining the top part of this, and I have my pins. So I'll go ahead and start this out. The first thing I would do is to fold this into two, and then I'll mark out, rule out a line at this point. I'll be using that's going to serve as my starting point as my shoulder area. So the first thing I want to do is to cut out the back piece first. So to do this, I'll just go ahead and place my tape vertically and then mark out the full length I want. Now, because we'll be attaching a flay to this, you need to add allowance. Okay, it's meant to end at your half length plus 1 inch extra for allowance. So I just went ahead to mark my bust points, my under bust points, and my half length, including 1 inch extra for my allowance. Okay, don't forget 1 inch extra is quite important. Okay, then the next thing I want to do is to mark out my shoulder. To do that, I'll divide the measurement I have by 2 and then I'll mark it out. Like for me, mine is 15. So I went ahead to mark it down, and then I'm marking a neck width of 3 inches. And then from my shoulder area, I'm coming down by 1 inch to serve as my shoulder slant. And I'm connecting this into the neckline. So I'm just basically marking a normal bodice. Now to get my armhole measurement, I will divide my round bust by 6 and add 1.5 inches to that. Okay. For me, I have 7 inches after I did that measurement. So I'll go ahead and mark 7 inches out. So just ensure you do same for yours. Measure your round bust, divide that by 6, and then whatever you get, add 1.5 inch to that. So I just connected it vertically, and I'm going to rule a line horizontally. Right? You can see this is what it looks like. So I want to get my armhole curve. Remember, I said the measurement I have there is 7 inches. I will just divide that by 2, which is 3.5, and then I will go in by half of an inch at that point and mark it down. After doing that, I will take the circumference of my bust, divide that by 4. I will also mark it down. This is just simply for me to get my armhole curve at this area. I will just use my curve rule and then connect the points I have made together. So you want to do this for yourself so that you can get a perfect armhole curve. So this is what I have after I did that. Now this wrap gown will be having a dart at the top area. To do this, I'll take the measurement for my bust span. For me, I have 7 inches. Now, the bust span is the distance from one nipple to the other, if you didn't know that, okay? That's what it simply means. So, the distance from one nipple to the other. Mine is 7. I divided that by 2. I have 3.5. So, I just went ahead to mark that on the bust point, the under bust point, and my half length. All right. So, after doing that, on the bust point area, I'll come down by 1 inches. This because the dart is not meant to get to that bust area. It's meant to end before the bust point. Okay, that's before the nipple point. All right. Then on the half length of this, that's on my waist area, I'll be going in and out by half of an inch on both sides, and then connecting this to the point where I came down by 1 inch. So just watch what I'm doing so that you're not lost while you're doing this. So at the your half length area, go in and out, sorry, by half of an inch. Now half of an inch depends on the size of your bust. Okay, if you're more busty, just use 1 inch at that area. So I've done that. I want to take my body measurement at this point. So I'll go in at the arm area. Remember, I already did that. I'll just add my 1.5 inch of stitching allowance to that. So I'll repeat the same measurement I have at my armhole area on the bust point. Then I will take my round waist measurement, okay, which is 7.5 after dividing that by 4, sorry. And then I'll add my that allowance and then my seam allowance. Okay, so at that area I just took 2.5 inches extra. Okay, 1 inch for my dart and 1.5 inch for the main seam allowance. Okay, and I connected that together. So at the neckline area, remember this is the back part of our top. Okay, it doesn't need to be too open because the front part is open already. Remember, it is a wrap dress, so you can decide to use 2 inches or 1.5 inches, all right, for the depth of the neck for the back. So I used a 1.5 inch for this. Okay, you don't want the back neck to be too open because the front is already open. All right, so I'm just going to connect this with the cuff part of my row together. So I have this. After I finish, I'll just go ahead and cut this out. So we just basically did a basic bodice for this. All right, I want to do is to cut out the front. So to cut it out, I'm gonna head to place the back piece, sorry, on another piece of fabric. And as you can see, I marked out 6 inches in front. Okay, that's going to serve as the wrap. Okay, and I drew the straight line there and place that there. Okay, so I hope you got it. So you need at least 5 to 6 inches for your wrap in front. So I'm just tracing out the other parts of my back piece because they'll have the same armhole, same length, but the only difference is the neck area. That's the center front. So I'm gonna head to do that. I will just unpin this now. All right, so this is what I have at the end of the day. Okay, you can see, so I have 6 inches in front for mine because I have a lot of fabric. Remember I said I was in 6 yards of fabric for this, so ensure you have enough. So from the down parts, as you can see, I went up by 2 inches. That's going to serve as area where my belt is going to stay. And from the top part where I marked the neckline from the back, I'm just going to connect this both points together. All right, so I'm just doing that connection straight. That means our front neckline has more like a V kind of shape. So you need to have enough allowance in front for this wrap. Okay, so ensure you have enough allowance. Okay, so I didn't impute my dart. Now, like I said, the dart is going to be for both the front and the back part of this dress. Okay, so I folded this the wrong way while I was cutting this out. So what I'm just going to do is to make a little notch at that end for the dart and then place it back the way I placed it initially. You want to ensure every part is matching. Okay, and then still take my dart point for the front piece. So I've gone ahead to do that, and this is what I have at the end of the day. I'm just going to cut out this area so we can see. Okay, I've gone ahead to do that. This is it. So I'll go ahead and cut this out on my lining piece. So I've done that. This is what we have. This is the back piece, this is the front piece, and you can see this is what we have. Okay, so I'll keep this aside and then work on our flame. Now for the flame, you can decide to do 360 degrees. You just whatever works for you. Like I said, whatever makes you happy. So ensure you're doing what your fabric can carry. Okay, consider the amount of fabric you have before taking that decision firstly. But for me, I'll be doing a 180-degree flay for this. So like I said, you can do a 360 depending on how full you want your flay to be, but for me, I'll be doing that. So to do this, I just folded my fabric into a triangle shape. As you can see, I'm just folding this down and helping it to relax properly. Okay, so the first thing I want to do for my flame is to measure out a point where I can get my round waist measurement. Now my round waist is 30. If I divide that by 4, I have 7.5. So I'm just going to go over this to ensure I have a point where I have 7.5, and then I'll make a mark there and roll it out. So for the flay, I'm cutting one piece for the back. I'm cutting the back piece first. This is the back piece before cutting the front. All right, so I'm going to cut out the back piece first. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to the next thing I want to do is to take my measurement. Now for the full length of my gown, I'm working with 45 inches. So remember I took 16 inches in at the top firstly. Okay, that's my half length to 16. So I minus 16 from 45, I have 29, and then I went ahead to add 1 inch for my seam allowance because I'll be folding this at the end, and I also need allowance to attach this to the top part of this. I hope you understand that. So what about the length you're working with for your flay? Minus it from just take the full measurement of your gown minus your half length from it, and then mark out your flay. So I just went ahead to mark this round. You can see I make ensure that um the tape was placed at the tip of, that's the first line at the top, while I was marking this round. You want to ensure you do this, okay? Don't allow your tape mouth to move from that area while you're taking this measurement. It's very important it stays there so it doesn't go off point. Like I said, so I'm marking 30 inches in length. Now I'll be exhausting 1 inch later for my hemming allowance, okay, and for joining. So I'm just going to connect these lines together. Cutting out this flay is actually quite easy. But if you don't want, if you want to do a 180 flay and you don't want yours to be fuller, then you don't need to fold to the end. Okay. So I've gone ahead to cut it out. This is what I have for my flay. Now this is just my back flay. So to cut out the front part of the flay, I'll go ahead and do the same folding like I did for the back. I'll fold this into a triangle shape. All right, so I'll go ahead and place this out. Ensure I fold it. Now remember, for the top part of this, we have about 6 inches extra for the front, which will serve as a wrap. So ensure while folding your fabric and placing the back piece on top of it, you also have that allowance. Okay, because it needs to be matching the top and the bottom part of this. They need to be matching at every end. Okay, so I've gone ahead to do that. I just had to take my measurement to ensure I had 6 inches extra, and I would just cut this out. Okay, so if you're working a fabric that's less than mine, now I didn't share my 6 yards of fabric, I just used everything together. So while doing this, ensure your fabric doesn't have like any place to be patched, especially the down part of it. Okay, so ensure it doesn't need anywhere to be patched. Okay, so I went ahead to check mine, so I don't have such a thing. But if it does, just place another piece of fabric there and then trace it out. Okay, you can just join that. It's going to work perfectly. So I have my piece together. Remember I said the smaller one is my back piece, so, and the bigger one is my front piece. Okay, so what I'll do is to just make notches for to mark out the center front of both of them. All right, and then I'll keep this aside and then work on my pocket. So to work on the pocket, I have a piece of paper I'll be using for this. Okay, it measures 7 inches in width and then 9 inches in length. Now you can use a deeper length for whatever you want. You can use a longer length than what I'm using. So from the top part, I came down by 6 inches. Then I'm going to go in by half of an inch. Okay, this is going to serve as my allowance while I'm attaching this to, like, attaching this to the main clothes. Okay, and my stitching allowance, so to say. So I've gone ahead to mark that out. Then the next thing I'm going to do, from the other end, I'll go up by 3 inches and make a point there. Okay, and then at the bottom end I'll go in by 2.5 inch. All right, so I'm just trying to get the curve for my pocket fitting. Okay, so I went in by 2.5 inch. The next thing I want to do is to connect the points I have. So I'll be connecting from the down part of this to this other end. I'm using my curve rule for this connection. So if you can sketch this out with a free hand, you can do that. Okay, but I advise you use a curve rule so you get it perfectly. So I'm connecting it also to the other point. I took 3 inches. I'm just going to make the connection at that end. All right, so from the point of my allowance, my half-inch allowance, I'm going to go in by 2 inches and make a mark there. Then I'll connect it to the other end of this. Okay, it might seem as if it's hard, but it's actually quite easy, just for you to get a pocket, a perfect pocket fitting, instead of placing your hands inside and tracing this out. Okay, after doing this, if you place your hand inside of it, okay, you will notice that you also have enough allowance. You can see it came out nice. So I'll just go ahead to Okay, this is the lines. This is what I have at the end of the day. Okay, so if you want to use a free hand to trace this out, I would not advise you do so, except it will come out perfectly. So this is what we have at the end of the day. So I'll go ahead later to cut this out in 4 places. Okay, 4 because we need to. Okay, so I went ahead to cut that one to show you what it will look like. So for the sleeves, I'm gonna head to cut out my sleeve for this dress. So I have a tutorial, a video tutorial on how to cut out a basic sleeve. Okay, it's quite easy, so check that out. So for my belt, because this has a belt, I'm just cutting out the pieces I need first. Okay, my belt measures about 3 inches in width, and then I have about 36 inches in length. All right. So if you want yours to be longer, I can go ahead and do that. Okay. So I have 2 pieces of this for the 2 different places I need. I'm just going to fold this in at one end. So if you want your band to be bigger, you can go ahead and use 4 inches so that by the time you finish folding, you will have 2 inches. Okay, so if you're using 4 inches, make sure you add allowance for your stitching. Okay, so you have to cut out 4.5 inch. All right, so I'll just go ahead and fold this in. So I've gone ahead to do that. So now I want to stitch down my band and start doing my stitching. Okay, to start placing this out. So I'll place my band at the point I marked for my band. Now you want to keep a little allowance at the bottom. Remember, we'll be attaching the flay to the top part of this. Okay, so I'll go ahead and stitch the neckline. All right, and then stitch the side, leaving open the armhole area and the down part of this. Okay, so before I stitch it down, I want to mark out my dart because I want to do all of that together. All right, so for the front dart, I'll be using 6 inches in the length, okay, to measure out my front dart, okay. So remember my bust point is 10 inches, and like I said, I don't want the dart should not get to the bust area. So I've gone ahead to do that. This is what I have, okay. After I did that, that's one piece for the front, and this is another piece for the front, okay. I've also gone ahead to attach my belt to it. So by the time I place both of them together, they will look this way. Okay, you can already see the wrap effect on it. They look nice already. Okay, so for my back piece, I also went ahead to turn it out. I just stitched down the sides and the neckline. Okay, but the dart for the back piece is 7 inches long. Right, so I have this. Okay, so I want to start attaching the flay part of this to this. So I'll bring in my flay for the back. Remember, I already made a notch for this earlier. Okay, so you want to mark them out so that you know them. Okay, it's essential you know which is going for which. Okay, so I'll go ahead and make a notch at the center point of the top back piece. All right, so that I can start attaching both of them together. So what I'll do is to place my flay, place them together, front facing front. Ensure you place them front facing front. Okay, so I'll place them this way. Okay, and then use 1/2 inch to stitch them down from one end to the other. Ensure the midpoints of this are meeting at an exact end. You can decide to pin this down so you're not mistaken. All right, so for the front piece, I've not opened this up. Remember, we have 2 pieces for the front. Okay, that's the top front, but for the skirt we just have one. So I'll just go ahead and split this open. So I have 2 of them. I will just place them this way, okay, and then stitch it down. All right, so you want to ensure you are placing the center front of the front piece around the area where you have your belt. Okay, so just go ahead and stitch it down. So I've stitched them down. This is my back piece. This is what it looks like after stitching it down, and this is the front part of it. This is what it looks like. Okay, so you can see I used the allowance, the 1/2 inch allowance I left to stitch it down together. So I want to go ahead to join the shoulders of this together. I'm going to place this front facing front so that I can join my shoulders together. So I'll place it this way. I'm going to place them front piece facing front piece. Okay, so you can just go ahead, you can decide to just stitch it down with half of an inch at that end after placing them together. Okay, stitch them together, but I don't want to do that because I want this to have a neat finishing at that end. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to place this, I'm going to use my lining piece, pick one of the lining piece and use it to wrap others together. Okay, so just watch what I'm doing carefully. So I'm just going to place this way and then stitch it down. You can see. So it's more like placing the lining pieces together, placing the fabric together. So I've done that. Okay, so what I want to do now is to attach my sleeves, right? So to attach this, I went ahead to bring this back. Okay, got the midpoint of my sleeves. I'm just placing them together at the point where should the shoulders meet. Okay, so you get the midpoint of the sleeves, place them at the point where the shoulders meet. Okay, after placing them together, you just go ahead and then stitch it down and stitch it down on both sides. So I've gone ahead to do that. I've attached my sleeves together to my cloth, and I also went ahead to hem the bottom of this with 1 inch. So I have this together. So our dress is coming in gradually. We just have a little things to do and we'll be through with this. Okay, so we want to close down the sides. Remember, I added 1.5 inch of an allowance to this. Okay, now the allowance I added was just at the top part of this while I was cutting it out. So we've exhausted exhausted half of that while we were stitching down the sides. Okay, so we have 1 inch of an allowance left. Okay, the sides, I mean, while we're attaching this to our lining, while we're attaching our lining piece together. So we've already exhausted part of it. So remember I said this dress will be having pockets, and we also need a space where rope is going to pass. So you can decide for your rope to pass at the right side or for it to pass at the left side, wherever you feel comfortable. Okay, so I'll go ahead to make my marks on where I want my rope to pass. So for me, I want the opening to be at the left side of it. Okay, so to do that, to do this, I'll go up from the waistline. Okay, I'll go up from the waistline by 2 inches and I'll make a mark there. Okay, that's the waistline from my half length. And then from the half length area, I'll come down by 1.5 inch. Right? So if you're using a bigger belt, you just have to adjust it to you adjust your opening to the size where your belt can easily pass through. Okay, so I've gone ahead to do that. Then from my pocket, I will go down from my half length again by 2 inches. Okay, so I'll go down from the half length by 2 inches, make a mark there. Now remember, while cutting our pocket out, we used 6 inches for our allowance. So I'm going to mark that 6 inches down at that point. All right. So that will be the area where I'm going to place my pocket piece. Okay. So while stitching this down, what I'll do is to just stitch from the beginning of this. I'll stitch when I get to the first point. I'll start from the second one, stop at that end, and then stitch to the full length. Okay, so I hope you got that. So it's just simply to stitch from the armhole area, stitch to the first point where I made my marking, stop it there, and then stitch to the next point, stop it, and then stitch fully. Okay, so I'm just marking out my pocket opening for this other end of my dress. So I'll just go ahead and stitch it down. Okay, so I hope you got that correctly. Okay, so I'll show you this after I finish stitching this down, what the entire grammar I was speaking is. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and stitch it down to that point, then stitch from this end to this end. Okay, then stitch fully. So I've gone ahead to stitch it down. You can see this is the opening for my pocket at that end. Now at this other end, I have the opening for my pocket at this end, okay, which is measure 6 inches in width, and I also have the opening for my rope. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is to fix my pocket. Remember, I've cut out 4 of this. You'll be needing 4 of this, 2 for one part and 2 for the other part. So I'll just go ahead and then attach this to my pocket using the allowance I left for this. All right, so you want to ensure while you're stitching your pocket down, the part with the extra curve stays under, okay, and then the other part stays below, okay. So this is how it will turn out by the time you finish stitching this down. So ensure it looks like this at the end of the day. If not, your pocket didn't come out good, okay. So it's going meant to look like this. All right, so we're almost through with this. We're actually through with this. The last thing we're going to do is just to go ahead and hem round this, okay. So if you're seeing this channel for the first time, don't forget to click on the subscribe button, okay. Turn on notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video, okay. And if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for watching, and see you in the next tutorial video, okay. So don't forget to do this, okay. Thank you for watching.